Hi guys. Hi guys. How is everybody doing? Let's just wait for a few more seconds and we'll begin, okay? Let's just wait for a few more seconds, okay? Let's wait some time so everybody can get here. Hmm. Okay. Great. So yeah. So I think we'll just begin. So, hello everybody. My name is Maria Jose Jaramillo. I am currently the Internal Development Assistant for the Americas, and today we have the third of our series of NMO management webinars. I hope this webinar is helpful to you. I will be going through some slides, but if you have any questions during the presentation, then you can put it on the chat in here. I will be seeing if you have any questions or comments, and I can stop and go through the slides again. So yeah, that is me, and I will be sharing my computer screen so you can see my slides. Okay. Okay. So yes, we will begin. As I told you, this will be the third of our webinar series, and the NMO management webinar series. And the topic today that we're going to discuss is the strategy to follow up and evaluation regarding strategic plans. This topic is extremely wide, specifically because it contains how to create a strategic plan or strategy itself. But I've tried to make it as concise as I could. So again, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to do them. And let's go. Let's start. So, of course, to understand how to analyze a strategy, we first have to know what is strategic planning itself. And so I know it's redundant to say that strategic planning is the strategy, but it's basically planning, right? So what we do is that this strategy is adopted or proposed by an organization or individual, and it always has to be summarized in a written document. If we do not have it written in a document, it's the same as basically not planning. The idea to have the written document is extremely important for follow-up and its revision as well, and because it can make it like it makes it real, because when we have it, we can have a lot of ideas and we can discuss them with our teams and everything, but once we've set it on paper, it's actually written and we can follow something. Now, the other important thing about strategic planning is basically that these documents or these strategy that we do contains different objectives, strategies, and goals. Right now, maybe I don't know if it's a little bit confusing because people tend to use the different words as if they're exchangeable with one another, but they're actually not, and they have different goals or different purposes. So we will see through the webinar, okay? Um, Another important characteristic of strategic planning is that it reflects on the organization's identity, mission, and vision. If it doesn't rely on these three components, then it's not actually strategic planning for our organization. And the other specific or the other relevant point for strategic planning is that it is time specific. Actions are driven because of time. Yeah. So this is actually strategic planning, right? Now, why do we do strategic planning? Why do we take a lot of our time to actually create this document, right? These, I actually took it from the IFMC webpage. So I think it's because we have the same idea or the same purpose as an organization, right? So it says all organizations evolve, even without an overall plan for where the organization is headed. New ideas will emerge, new initiatives will kick off, and a lot of work will be done. Yet these efforts may not be very well aligned. I think this quote actually describes perfectly why do we do strategic planning, and it's basically because we are growing and developing every day. We maybe don't realize it, but our organizations are constantly changing and creating and evolving, as the word says. Therefore, that is why we do strategic planning, because we want to set our organization through a specific path or to accomplish some goals that we need to do as a team, as a collective. Now, strategic planning has different steps or different ways of creating the process. This is a general way to see it, but it has different steps, right? So on first hand, if you go to number one, you can see that it says, where are we, right? How can we create a strategic plan if we don't know what we're doing right now or what are we doing right now? Basically, it's like taking a picture of your current situation and saying, okay, so this is what we have and this is what we have to work with, right? To create an analysis of where we are or what are we doing, you have to make it situational, right? And you have to consider different factors. These factors may be internal or external. We have different kind of analysis for this or tools that we can use. Maybe the most known tool for this kind of analysis is the SWOT analysis. I'm really sure you've heard of it, but basically what it considers is our strengths, our weaknesses, our opportunities, and our threats, right? So these four elements are considered, and they are about the internal and external aspect of our organizations or a specific problem or different whereabouts of what do we have or what are we doing as an organization. So once we take this first picture, we know what we're dealing with. Then we go to where could we be, right? With these characteristics as an organization, where can we go to different possible and future scenarios? Okay, so as you can see on the inside of this 6-step process, there are two different core elements, right? I want you to think about it as we are explaining step by step because it will be extremely important for the evolvement of this presentation. So on step number 3, after we take that picture and we know all the possible scenarios that we could go through, we determine where do we want to go. So it links to the future vision, but shorter time horizon, right? To 2 to 5 years, which is the estimated or recommended time that we should have a strategic plan. And you have to consider SMART goals, which we will talk about afterwards. Yeah, so that will be the third step, right? Then on the fourth step, we have how do we get there? It is extremely important to think about how we're going to do it, right? Because we can, as I told you before, we can have a lot of plans, we can have a lot of ideas, but to actually execute them is a totally different story. So after we get a plan and we go, okay, we want to go here as an organization, we want to accomplish these goals as an organization, we want to know different strategies. And that's the part 1 of how do we get there. Strategies are different purposes or different ways of achieving something. We will see the difference within strategics and tactics really shortly. But it's actually creating how to implement these ideas that we have, right? Then, as I told you, this will be the first step of two. The part two of how do we get there is to actually implement the strategies that we think about. Again, if we have merely an idea and don't implement it, it's the same as actually not doing anything at all. And lastly, once we already implement the idea, we have to know if that implementation is correct or is adequate. For that, we have to ask ourselves, are we getting there? Are we getting the objective that we want to do or not? For this, we can use metrics. Metrics are different ways of measuring, which we will discuss afterwards, which is after an evaluation of every goal or every method that we have asked. Okay, so after understanding the different steps that we have as processes or the different things that we need to consider to actually create a strategic plan, as I told you, there are core elements that are inside all of this planification that we do. These main three elements that we have to consider are the mission, vision, and values. These elements are core also to our identity, like corporate identity that we have as an organization, which is a basic element of how we identify to ourselves and to external partners, um, or in our case, to different NMOs, and basically how we present ourselves. Sometimes we get a little bit confused with some terms because they're merely used on every document or every idea that we use, such as mission and vision. But mission, basically, the best way to describe it is what we are right now as an organization, right? Mission is what we identify ourselves by and what we do right now. It is as if we took a picture of the exact moment that we're working right now. Then vision, it's on regarding on who we want to become as an organization. So if you remember on the first series of webinars that we did, if you attended to the first one, we talked about mission and vision, the IFMSA mission and vision. And you can see an extremely important difference because when we're talking about IFMSA's mission, we're discussing about what we do right now, all of our advocacy efforts, all of our different activities or exchanges, and basically the work that you already know and work every day. When we talk or discuss about IFMSA's vision, we talk about the achievement of global health. It is a really, really much wider and more, it has more impact as an objective and it's way wider and time frame, right? So that is the main difference. If we're talking, for example, about our personal lives, we're all medical students, right? So when we talk about mission, right now what we're doing is studying at our different schools and we're taking our classes and we're taking our professional practices, and that would be what we're doing right now. But our vision would be to actually become a doctor. So that's the difference between one another. Now, as you can see, the mission and vision are always interlinked with values. Values are the things that determine on which way we would go or stop working because of what we believe in. So, for example, one of the most used values to intercept or to work with is respect. I think in IFMSA we have a really, really broad use of the value respect on our different work, and it is also interlinked within our mission and vision. Okay? So, let's go. Okay, so like I told you, there are many terms and it can be a little bit difficult because people tend to use them interchangeably, although they're not. So as I told you at first time, vision is basically what we aspire to be, right? Okay, sorry about that. So yeah, vision is regarding about what we aspire to be as a business or what a company and organization as a person, whatever you wanted to call it. In this case, as an NMO. Then the mission is why the company exists or the organization exists, and what the founder envisioned. What we're doing right now, what we're working, and like I told you, is a basically a current and an afterwards picture. Now, the plan also includes objectives. Objectives are the result that this organization aims to achieve. So, of course, there are different ways of presenting this kind of objectives, and one of the most used as companies are the SMART objectives. These results we're going to measure afterwards, and it's the main goal of creating a strategy actually itself as an NMO. Now, strategies are how are we going to achieve those objectives. As it says here, there are long-term plans designed to achieve objectives, and it's basically what are we planning to do to achieve them. So it will be the fifth step, the fourth and fifth step that we were talking about before. Afterwards, we have the approach. So the approach is the methodology that we use for executing that long-term plan. And the smaller or the lowest on that pyramid is the tactics, which are smaller focused action plans that are to support the overall approach of that strategy. This pyramid model is really easy to understand or to differentiate as different terms. And what we're doing is to actually be more detailed and thorough about what we're going to do to achieve our final goal that will be to achieve our vision, right? Okay, so let's continue. So yeah, like I told you, people tend to get confused with this specific terms. So I think this, I'm really sorry about it, about the background noise, guys. So this table actually, it makes it extremely easy to understand, right? So in here, it's high level, which means to a broader or a more wider level. And then we have detail level, which are the last parts of the different pyramids that I told you about. When we discuss about high level or the broader level, we also have to differentiate within what and how we're going to do it. On a broader aspect, we're talking about goals. As I told you, goals are basically what we want to achieve on a wider aspect. So we want to become the best NMO IFMSA has. That would be the higher level, right? And how are we going to do it? Okay, we're going to create a strategic plan that's going to lead us to that current goal. Then we talk about detail level. Detail level are smaller or more specific, driven through strategies, which are objectives. Objectives are what? What are we going to do? Like I told you, there are different ways to actually create an objectives, and we're going to discuss about SMART objectives. And how we're going to get to that objective, that will be tactics, the smaller, the lowest on the pyramid that I showed you. Okay. So, the famous SMART objectives. When we discuss SMART objectives, this is an acronym for how can we create really measurable or really concise objectives that are going to be specific, and they have different characteristics to actually create them a real or to make more objectives. Sorry for the redundancy. Okay, so the first letter on the SMART acronym is S, which relates to specific objectives. Specific means that we are not setting it too wide, that it is directed either it's to a population, or either it is specific on time, or either it's specific on the topic that we're gonna make that objective on. There are different ways to make it specific. We usually tend to make it more for the population. So, for example, IFMSA works, right now we're discussing with that task force if we're gonna include other non-medical students, right? But when it began, it was basically for medical students, and that will be the main population. So if we're discussing an objective, for example, in an activity, when we create the activity, we usually tend to make it, for example, for medical students on the first years or the last years, or for specifically driven populations, minorities, different like people who are at risk of non-communicable diseases. Like there are different targets that we use, and that can be one way of making it specific. Now, measurable. People tend to forget about making objectives measurable, not because they don't want it to, because the actual reason is because they don't tend to think about actually measuring it afterwards, creating like how much impact did my activity have, or how much did I actually reach that goal. It's really hard like to not think of objectives like accomplished or not accomplished. So measurable is to actually given something that can be afterwards evaluated. Either it's with an impact of how much people I'm going to reach, or either if it's percentage driven or if it's number driven. There are different ways to make it measurable, but the thing is that we need to make it objective. If we bring subjectiveness into the objectives, then basically what it creates is judgment when we're evaluating, and it's better to make it just measurable and objective. Okay, on our third letter on the SMART acronym, it's attainable. Sometimes we tend to dream, which is totally fine if we do it. But we need to know that if we're creating a strategy, it is because we want to actually accomplish something, right? And not only accomplish, but also to actually to make strategies that are real, right? So attainable, if I'm a medical student and I'm from Ecuador and my organization is based solely on my country, I cannot make my objective to be the best NMO that it's on the Europe region, right? We have to attain to what we actually have and what we actually can do, and we have to be real about it. Okay. The next letter on the acronym is relevant. Relevancy can be subjective. Sometimes people tend to ask when I get to relevancy, because they say, okay, maybe it's relevant to me, but not relevant to you. And that's really true. But the thing is that we are not here to make relevancy to ourselves. We are here to make relevancy to the media. We are here to make relevancy to the population we're basing our objectives on. For example, if we work for our national medical students, then we have to make it relevant for them, right? If we're working on the international level, then we have to make relevancy for the international level. We have to know what objective we're directing towards, and yeah. And the last letter of the acronym is T, which is time-based, and I think this is one of the most important parts of the acronym. As I told you before, strategic plans are usually last from 2 to 5 years, most of them 3 years. So yeah, this is why it should be time-based, and we should create objectives that are solely for this time frame. If we do not set a time, then we could take years, we could take even ages if we want to, and we cannot measure the accomplishment of this objective. Okay, let's go forward. Okay, so yeah, as I told you, the most important thing is time. And yeah, you could do a strategic plan for 5 years. Of course you could. But we have not only IFMSA and also our region, Americas, has a 3-year plan. But also we have seen that it's way better because we have a lot of change within our directories. We have a yearly change of the positions that we have in our NMOs. So if we would do it a 5-year, maybe it would be more difficult for us to actually have an evaluation or to actually see changes, because organizations are evolving every day and they're really time sensitive. Even 6 months could be determinant for accomplishing an objective or not to ourselves. So although we drive the organization with our strategic plans towards a specific direction, Making it too long can affect the effectiveness of this plan, or making it too short can be not actually driven for the organization itself. Okay, so now that we know all the different elements that we need to include in strategic planning, and we know about the different terms that we use, how to create an objective, what is mission, what is vision. So now we have to actually evaluate after doing the strategic plan. Is it adequate or not? What are the questions we need to ask ourselves whether it's adequate or not? So the first question is, does it reflect my mission and vision? If we do not make a document that reflects those things, and of course, when I'm talking also about mission and vision, I am also talking about our values and basically our identity as an organization. If it doesn't reflect, then it's not my strategic plan. It is someone else's, another organization, a company, a group of people, but it's not my NMO strategic plan. Now, realistic. As I told you before, if I'm part of the Americas region, I cannot make it part of my strategic plan to be the best NMO that's on the Europe or in the Africa region, because we have to be realistic within our limits and also about how we work it or where do we work with it. Integrated. When I'm talking about integration, we have different work areas that we develop on each NMO. We have activities, we have exchanges, we have capacity building, we have internal development, external development, finances, registration. We have a lot of different areas in which we develop. So it has to be integrated. I cannot discuss each of these areas separately as if they were not joined, because although, yes, of course, most of them have specific things to accomplish, but they all should work for a common goal, right? That's the idea of the strategic plan. As I told you, the main goal would be to finally accomplishing the vision that we have as an organization. But all of those areas have to set different goals to accomplish that vision itself. Balance. So when the time will come and you will make your strategic plan with your team, maybe there are some areas that are more developed than others, or there are different things that you have focused on as a national team, but you need to balance it out. You need to understand that we need to work on all different areas to actually accomplish our main goal, right? Our next question is if it is complete. I cannot stress the fact of how many strategic plans I've seen that they're not complete. How can I judge whether it is complete or not if it has all of the elements that I've told you before? Many times, because we want to have a strategic plan and we want to work it on our year, we tend to actually just create a document that doesn't have all of the core elements that I've described right now. Yeah, so when you create that incomplete strategic plan, it is not useful. You can analyze it afterwards and you will see that it's not measurable, it's really difficult to understand, and basically you complicate things for the following national officers, also your local directories, your LCs. It is actually really complicated for a lot of people. The next question is if it is clear. So when we're discussing with our team all of our different ideas, maybe we think that we have that we are actually projecting what we want to achieve as a team afterwards, but that's not the case all the time. If you are not there, then you will not understand all of the discussion that was behind. You will merely see what's written in that document. That's why we have to express and stress ourselves specifically what we want to achieve or what we want to say as a team when we're reading it. And also as well, the idea is that not only ourselves should understand that strategic plan, but also that document should be understood by anybody who wrote and who read that, right? Not only our local directories, but also our active members, and even external partners. They should be able to read our document and say, okay, this organization is driven to do this. Maybe they will not understand all of our specific terms, but they will have a general idea because it is clear enough of how we're going to do it. Okay. Now, the final question that we have to consider within if my strategic plan is adequate or not, it is if it is measurable. Once again, I know I have repeated this many times, but you cannot understand how important it is to be measurable because we need to evaluate it somehow, and we have to do it as objectively as possible. Okay. So now, as I told you before, there are already strategies that are implemented at the regional level and also at the international level. These strategies have different pillars, different ideas, different indicators, and different objectives as well that actually drive all of our actions. As I told you before, the strategic plan as the organization will set every move, every action, every strategy, and every tactic that you will make through the next 3 years. And that's exactly what the strategies are also to ourselves. The last strategic plan that was created for the region was in 2018. It was set after the August meeting, and it was approved during this last regional meeting. And it has different pillars and different ideas that we actually are working on the regional level, and they have surely seen that you have surely seen different strategies and different things that the regional team has been working on, and you can see it constantly on our server as well, on all of the things, on all of the calls that we are making. So yeah, in this case, it will be 2018, 2019, and 2020. Again, the 3 years time period that I told you about. Let's wait for me just 1 second. Okay. Yep. Okay, so like I told you, we have different pillars that we have right now on the regional team or on the regional strategy itself. The first one is to increase involvement in policy documents. That is the first and utmost pillar that we have been discussing. And the idea to include pillars, I'm sorry, before going in all of the different topics. So the idea to have pillars or different topics set on your strategic plan itself is to have a more wide a different way to drive your actions. If we, for example, one of the basic things that you could do as an organization to set your own pillars is to see all of your different work areas that you have right now. As I told you, we of course share different work areas. We all have activities, we all have exchanges, we have internal development, external development, finances, registry, and capacity building. So within these areas, you can set your priorities and you can work around them, because those priorities would set actually your main objective or your main goal. Okay. So now, coming back to the pillars, right? Our first pillar is to increase involvement in policy documents. We have seen that the Americas has rather a difficulty when it comes to policy documents. We are not as involved within its process as other NMOs in the IFMSA. And most of our NMOs in the Americas do not have their own national policy documents. So we have to rely on the international level policy documents, or we basically don't use them at all. So that is why it is the first pillar that we have set on our strategic plan, and it has different indicators and different strategies. I would like you to actually read this document. Your NMO president should have it and can share it with you. So you can read the different indicators that we have set. There are some strategies such as an NMO manual for policy documents, also to motivate and to make people from the Americas to participate within this NMO, these policy document processes. So there are different strategies, and we tend to use indicators such as actually measuring the involvement or how many policy documents they have. Um, if there is a regional database that we have to use for how many national policy documents, and there are different ways to actually measure it. Okay, on the second pillar that we have, it is sustainable partnership. Sustainable partnership, it may be usually confusing because we tend to rely sustainable on actually uh, the, the the effect on climate change or other factors. But when we talk about sustainable, it's something that lasts, right? And partnerships have been rather difficult on the Americas or for national member organizations in the Americas. So there are different strategies such as a regional partnership mapping, or actually to help NMOs or creating strategies for making it more sustainable with their partners. So yeah, they are also interesting. The third pillar in a regional strategy is sustainable recruitment and NMO engagement. The process of actually recruiting an NMO and making capacity building with them and active on IFMSA, as well as engagement on the international level, which we have had different strategies. Our fourth pillar is to support animals with creating national strategies, which is basically what we're doing right now. And our fifth and last pillar is national financial plans, because we have seen that there are many animals that have difficulties within this range. So I wanted to show you the Americas pillars because I want you to understand that to create a strategy for your NMO, you have to understand what you're dealing with. So I have tried to explain, for example, these pillars with the difficulties that we have seen at our regional level. And the strategy tries to eliminate those difficulties or to actually mitigate that breach that we have right now. And that's exactly what you should do, to understand what are your difficulties and then to create strategies to overcome them, to create a more, to create solutions to your problems. Basically, that's what the strategy planning is. And yeah, as I talked before, this is the cycle that we have. And I want you to see, so we already discussed all of this, right? But what I want you to see is this last part, that when we have already the results, because sometimes we don't realize it, but we have those results, we have to analyze them and see how can we improve. This is the most important part of this whole cycle. If we do not understand our results, then we have done strategic planning for nothing. So yeah, the most important part of course, it is a whole process to create strategy itself. You have to do it in teamwork. You have to consider a lot of things. You have to analyze a lot of things. So it is a whole process. But I really think after implementation, the most difficult thing is evaluation. Evaluation has a lot of elements and a lot of things that we need to take into account to make it an objective evaluation of what we're doing. And this can actually be applied to anything we do, not only national strategic plans, but everything we do. There are different criteria that we need to take into consideration. We have to analyze our data to create and actually execute 100% performance, to create different approaches to improve, and to have a lot of feedback and assessment, right? This is the point of evaluating something, to improve. So you can choose different ways to understand it or to analyze your strategic planning after you have done it. The first element or core element that you can include in your evaluation is measurements in different time. When I discuss about measurements, I think for example, if we're doing a 3 year plan, then we should set a different time to reanalyze it, right? If we're doing a 3 year, I can do a yearly analysis, I can do a 6 month analysis, I can do a trimester analysis. We can set up different times where we can say, okay, stop, let's see how we're doing, right? Like taking that picture as I told you before. The next strategy is to create different reports or indicators. Reports, what do I mean? We are working constantly, even if we don't realize it, we're working around our strategic plan. So creating reports, for example, from your EB or your whole national team or even your active members, your LCs, there are different ways that they can report it and say, okay, I think we're accomplishing this. I don't think we're accomplishing this. These are the numbers that we get this month. These are the numbers that I got this year, but we need to actually have a report of it. Indicators, they're usually set from the strategic plan, but we need to set those indicators as well. Every time we implement something, again, if it's the strategic planning or if it is even our own lives, we have to set some indicators so we can stop and say if we're accomplishing something or not. Okay, the next point is the level of detail that we choose to make that analysis or that evaluation. Remember before we saw that different table where it says to a higher level or to a more detailed level if we're talking about goals or if we're talking about objectives and how we're going to get them. So the level of detail that you choose to understand or to analyze your plan can vary the results that you want. If you want to see really, really specific data from an objective, then you will get those results. But if you want to see, okay, am I getting closer to my vision or not, that will be on a wider aspect. Okay, and the last thing that you have to take into consideration for the evaluation is the process you want to follow. Do you want to make it only with your EB? Do you want to make it with your national team? Do you want to make it with your LCs? That will be yours to choose. But of course, I think that it should be informed before, and you should basically see it beforehand. When you create your strategic plan, you should also create the evaluation process. Okay. So where do we start? And that is usually the first question. Where do we start our evaluation? Basically at the beginning. So you go back, you stop, you see the results from your strategic plan, and you say, what did we do? What did we do well? Right? Because not everything is negative. You also have to see what you're doing correctly because you have to still replicate it or continue doing it. That would be the first question. Afterwards would be what can we improve? The bad things, right? What did we do wrong and we can be better at? Then, what did we learn? This is a really difficult question because people tend to ignore that we're still learning. Although we're every day doing capacity building such as this opportunity, we also have to stop and say, okay, we are learning this, right? The fourth and maybe one of the most important questions is, did we meet our objectives and indicators? Yes or no? It is that easy. Then, were our objectives right? Right? So were they, when we thought about it, were they driving us to our vision? Weren't they? Were they too subjective? Yeah. Was it, for example, did they have smart format? Did they have all these things that we have seen right now? Right? The next question is, what was it that helped us succeed? As I told you, it is extremely important to identify what we're doing right, because we are not only made out of mistakes. There are also different strategies that we are successful at, and we should take into account to keep doing them. And the last question will be, are we closer to our vision? We are hardly going to achieve our our ambition on only one strategy, right? It is extremely unlikely. So we have to see how much closer are we to actually achieving it. Okay. On the next point, it is always, always, always remember act. Action changes things. I think I have stressed a lot of times during this webinar that we can do a lot of plans. We can create a lot of ideas and initiatives, but actually doing them can change everything. And that's the same thing with evaluation. We can talk about evaluation and we can say amazing processes that we can follow, or we can say incredible things to evaluate actually our progress. But doing it, it's completely different and it makes that change. Okay, so yeah, that would be basically most of the topic. Like I told you before, it is an extremely wide topic. Nevertheless, I have tried to make it concise and to make it clear and understandable. But if you have any questions, if you want me to discuss a little bit more about any slide um, that you have any doubts in or anything, you can put it on the chat. Yep. Let's see. Let me see. Thank you, no doubts. Okay. Thank you, Raul. Is there anybody, does anybody have any questions? Nope. Okay, then I'm just gonna share my information with you so you can contact me if you have any question or any doubt, if you're not sure about how to create a national strategy or how to evaluate it. I'm totally available for you. My name is Maria Jose Jaramillo, as I told you. That's my email right there, and you have my WhatsApp, my Instagram, my Facebook. You can text me, you can write me through any social media. And also, you should know that maybe this week, we're gonna start working with NMO presidents to see their status on strategic planning and their national strategies to see if they have one. And we're gonna work with each NMO. So if you have attended this webinar, it would be extremely good or extremely interesting if you could talk with your national officers and you can discuss with them and help them with this process. So yeah, basically that would be it. I'm totally available for any questions that you have afterwards, and I thank you for coming to this webinar. I hope it was productive for you and that it was clear and that you have a better idea of how to create and evaluate a national strategy. So yeah, that would be it. Yeah. So thank you guys. It's been amazing. Also, please don't forget that we have, this is not the last webinar. We have a lot of series of webinars as well with it. And we have the CVIOGs and SRT procedures webinar tomorrow coming up from our incredible CVRA Rodrigo. So don't miss it. And we have shared the link through email, through the Americas group on Facebook, and you can also contact your NMO president or your national directory if you have questions of how to get it. And yeah, so these series of webinars have been incredible, and let's hope you can still come. Bye, guys. Thank you for coming.